The apology that made every alien rethink everything. John Miller wiped his sweaty palms on his diplomatic uniform. Today was the day humanity would either secure its place among the stars or be condemned to isolation. The hallway leading to the Galactic Confederation's council chamber seemed to stretch forever. The metal walls gleamed with a blue-green light that made human skin look sickly. "You ready for this?" asked Samantha Wright, his aide and the only other human aboard the massive alien flagship. John nodded, though he didn't feel ready at all. They need to understand it was an accident. 3 weeks ago, a human research vessel called the Horizon had fired upon a Zalaxian scout ship near Neptune. The ship's sensors had malfunctioned, identifying the alien craft as an asteroid on collision course. Captain Laura Bennett had ordered a warning shot that damaged the Zalaxian ship's propulsion system. No one died, but the diplomatic damage was severe. Now John stood as humanity's representative, tasked with making things right. Remember, direct eye contact with the Zalaxians is seen as a challenge, but avoiding eye contact with the Arcturans is considered dishonest, Samantha whispered as they approached the massive doors. "After 15 years in diplomacy, I think I can handle basic alien etiquette," John replied with a nervous smile. What he couldn't say was that none of his training had prepared him for stakes this high. The doors slid open without a sound. The council chamber was a vast semicircle with 7 raised platforms for the 7 major species of the Confederation. At the center stood a small platform where John would present Earth's case. The council members were already seated. The Zalaxians, with their iridescent exoskeletons and clicking mandibles, sat to the far left. Beside them were the gaseous Medusans, contained in special environment suits that gave them roughly humanoid shape. The centipede-like Vril occupied the center position, their current council leader clicking her front appendages for order. The empathic Arcturans, looking almost human except for their silver skin and eyes without pupils, sat to the right. The remaining seats held representatives from species so different from humans that John still struggled to read their body language. "The representative from Earth may approach," announced the Vril leader, her words translated through the small device in John's ear. John stepped onto the platform. Samantha remained at the back of the room. "Distinguished council members," John began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I come before you to address the unfortunate incident at Neptune's orbit. On behalf of Earth and all humanity, I extend our deepest regrets for the damage caused to the Zalaxian vessel." The Zalaxian representative rose. Under the bright lights, his exoskeleton shimmered with colors that human eyes could barely process. "Regrets?" The alien's translator made the word sound harsh. "Your species fired upon our peaceful scout ship without warning or provocation. There was a sensor malfunction," John started to explain. "We have reviewed the data," interrupted the Vril leader. "Your explanation of events appears factually correct. The firing was not intentional aggression. However, this raises more concerning questions about human readiness for space exploration." The Arcturan representative stood next. Her voice came through the translator as soft and melodic. "Representative Miller, since first contact 6 months ago, we have studied your species with great interest. We have accessed your historical records, literature, and broadcasts." John nodded. This was standard procedure. "What we found," continued the Arcturan, "was disturbing. Your species has a history marked by continuous warfare. You have fought over resources, territory, ideology, and religion. You have developed weapons capable of destroying your own world several times over." "That's our past," John argued. "We've worked hard to move beyond. 3 of your nation-states are currently engaged in armed conflict," stated the Medusan representative, their environment suit pulsing with reddish light. "Another 5 are experiencing what you call civil unrest. Your history suggests these patterns will continue." John felt the conversation slipping away from him. They weren't concerned about the incident itself. They were questioning humanity's right to join galactic society. "Council members, with respect, you're judging our entire species based on our worst moments. Yes, humans have a violent history, We've made terrible mistakes, but we've also created art, music, literature. We've made scientific discoveries. We value compassion and cooperation. The Zolaxian clicked its mandibles rapidly, a sign of disagreement. Pretty words, yet your actions at Neptune speak louder. A minor sensor malfunction and your immediate response was to fire weapons. It was a defensive reaction to a perceived threat, John explained. Captain Bennett believed her crew was in danger. Precisely our concern, said the Vril leader. Humans react to uncertainty with violence. Samantha caught John's eye from the back of the room and tapped her wrist. Time was running out. Council members, John said, straightening his shoulders. I came here to apologize for an unfortunate incident, not to defend humanity's entire history. We are sorry for what happened. We take full responsibility and are implementing new protocols to ensure it never happens again. A strange silence fell over the chamber. The aliens exchanged glances that John couldn't interpret. Finally, the Arcturan spoke. This concept of apology is curious. You acknowledge fault, express regret, but expect this verbal ritual to erase the offense? John blinked in surprise. An apology isn't about erasing anything. It's about acknowledging wrongdoing as the first step toward making things right. More silent communication passed between the council members. John had the uncomfortable feeling that they were having a conversation he couldn't hear. The Vril leader finally spoke. The council will recess to consider Earth's position. Our decision will be announced when we reconvene. As the council members filed out, John returned to Samantha at the back of the chamber. That could have gone better, he sighed. Did you notice their reaction when you apologized? Samantha asked, her voice low. It was like they didn't understand the concept. Before John could respond, a small Arcturan aide approached them cautiously. The nameplate on his silvery uniform identified him as Crix. Representative Miller, the alien said quietly. I should not be speaking to you during deliberations, but I felt compelled. This apology, it is not a concept universal to Confederation species. John stared in disbelief. Surely other species have ways to acknowledge wrongdoing. Not as yours does, Crix replied. For Zolaxians, admitting error brings shame to the entire hive. Medusans believe acknowledgement of fault deteriorates their physical form. Arcturans, he hesitated. We sense emotions but have no framework. For this deliberate acceptance of responsibility as you practice it. What are you saying? Samantha asked. I fear the council has already decided, Crix whispered. Earth will be quarantined, denied further contact with Confederation species until humans are deemed less volatile. As Crix hurried away, John turned to Samantha, his mind racing. They've misunderstood us completely. They see our capacity for violence but miss our capacity for growth. The doors reopened as the council members returned to their places. John knew from their postures that the news would not be good for Earth. What he didn't know was that this moment would change the course of galactic history, all because of a human gesture the aliens had never encountered before. A sincere apology. The apology that made every alien rethink everything. Part 2. The mood was grim at the International Space Administration headquarters in Geneva. Rain tapped against the tall windows as Director Patricia Coleman led the emergency meeting. The holographic display in the center of the room showed the 7 massive alien ships now positioned around Earth's orbit like silent watchers. 100 years, Patricia said, breaking the heavy silence. That's the quarantine period they've decided on. 100 years before we can petition for reconsideration. John Miller sat with his head in his hands. After the council's verdict, he and Samantha had been swiftly returned to Earth. The aliens had been polite but firm. Humanity was considered too unpredictable, too prone to violence. They would be allowed to continue development on their own planet and within their solar system, but interstellar technology would be withheld. This is absurd, said Alan Garcia, the veteran diplomat who had mentored John for years. They judge our entire species based on our history without considering how far we've come. Dr. Olivia Jackson, the leading xenopsychologist, shook her head. From their perspective, it makes perfect sense. These species evolved differently than we did. She pulled up her research notes on the holographic display. The Zelaxians have a hive mind structure. The concept of individual action is foreign to them. The Arcturans are natural empaths who physically feel each other's pain. They never developed warfare as we understand it, because hurting others would hurt themselves. And the others? Asked Patricia. Similar fundamental differences, Olivia explained. The Medusans exist partially in another dimension. Conflict would disrupt their physical form. The Vril reproduce by dividing, so they see themselves as parts of a whole rather than as competitors. So what you're saying is that violence itself is alien to them, John said quietly. Not exactly, Olivia corrected. They understand the concept of conflict. What they don't understand is how a species can contain both extreme violence and extreme compassion. To them, we're walking contradictions. Unpredictable. Samantha, who had been quietly studying the recording of the council meeting, suddenly straightened in her seat. Wait, go back to what that Arcturan aide told us. Crix, I think his name was. John remembered. He said that our concept of apology isn't universal among Confederation species. That's it, Samantha exclaimed. Watch their reactions when John apologized. She replayed the footage. The aliens' body language showed confusion, dismissal, even discomfort. They've studied our wars, our conflicts, but they've missed something fundamental about human nature, John realized, standing up. Our capacity for redemption, Olivia finished, her eyes widening with understanding. The very concept that we can acknowledge wrongdoing, feel genuine remorse, and change our behavior, it's completely foreign to them. Alan looked skeptical. So your plan is what? A bigger apology? Not bigger, John replied. Better. One that shows them who we really are. For the next 3 days, the team worked around the clock. They compiled historical footage of human reconciliation efforts throughout history. German Chancellor Willy Brandt, kneeling at the Warsaw Ghetto Memorial. South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Former enemies from World War II meeting, decades later in friendship. We need more than just government examples, Samantha suggested. We need to show this is part of everyday human life. They put out a global call, and responses flooded in. Ordinary people from around the world sent short video messages about personal mistakes, the harm they had caused others, their remorse, and the steps they took to make amends. A farmer from Iowa spoke about a decades-long feud with his neighbor that they had finally resolved. A teacher from Kenya described how she had wrongly accused a student and later worked to rebuild trust. A doctor from Japan talked about a medical error and how it changed his practice forever. Meanwhile, Olivia worked with a team of linguists and psychologists to analyze the Confederation species' communication patterns. We need to make sure they understand the emotional weight behind an apology, she explained. It's not just words to us. On the 4th day, they received a surprising message. It was from Crix, the Arcturan aide. Several council members have been observing Earth communications since the verdict, the message read. Your response puzzles them. Instead of anger or preparation for conflict, they detect widespread acceptance of the verdict, mixed with a desire to prove yourselves. This reaction was not predicted by any Confederation models of human behavior. John immediately replied, requesting a second audience with the council. There was no response, for 2 more days. Then, just as hope was fading, a Confederation shuttle entered Earth's atmosphere with permission to land in Geneva. Crix emerged from the shuttle alone. His silver skin reflected the sunlight as he approached the human delegation waiting on the landing pad. The council will hear you, he said simply, but not in the formal chamber. My superiors wish to understand this apology concept more fully before reconvening. Thank you, John said, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting. Crix stared at the outstretched hand. Your historical records show this gesture evolved from showing one carried no weapons. John nodded. Many of our peaceful customs evolved from violent origins. That's part of what we want your people to understand. As they walked toward the conference building, Crix asked, "Is it not shameful for your species to admit error? Does it not diminish your standing?" John considered the question carefully. Actually, it's the opposite. In human cultures, refusing to acknowledge mistakes is seen as a weakness, not a strength. We respect those who can admit when they're wrong and work to do better. Crix's expression remained unreadable, but his pace slowed slightly. This is difficult to process. For Arcturans, acknowledging failure brings genetic demotion in future spawnings. For us, Samantha added, joining the conversation, acknowledging failure is the first step toward growth. Inside the conference room 5, members of the council waited, not in their ceremonial robes, but in what appeared to be their version of casual attire. John recognized the representatives from the Arcturans, Zolaxians, Medusans, Vril, and a fifth species he couldn't name. Representative Miller, the Arcturan elder, spoke first. "We are here unofficially. Consider this a cultural exchange." John nodded gratefully. "Thank you for this opportunity." "Explain this apology concept further," requested the Zolaxian, mandibles clicking softly. "Our studies suggest it is central to human conflict resolution, yet we do not understand its function." John glanced at his team. This unexpected interest might be exactly the opening they needed. The quarantine wasn't just a setback for humanity, it was an opportunity to bridge a cultural gap that no one had realized existed. "I'd be happy to explain," John said. "But first I'd like to show you something." He activated the presentation they had prepared, ready to show the aliens a side of humanity they had completely overlooked. As the first images appeared, John noticed something he hadn't seen during the council meeting, genuine curiosity in the aliens' eyes. Maybe there was hope after all. The apology that made every alien rethink everything. Part 3. The conference room was silent as the first video testimonial ended. It showed an elderly man from Argentina speaking about how he had treated his son harshly for years, pushing him away, before finally acknowledging his mistakes and rebuilding their relationship. John looked around at the alien delegates. The Zolaxian's color had shifted to a deep blue. The Arcturan sat completely still, silver eyes wide. The Medusan's containment suit pulsed with changing lights. "I do not understand," the Zolaxian finally said. "This human knowingly caused harm to his offspring, then later admitted this harm and the offspring accepted him again?" "Yes," John replied simply. "In Zolaxian society, a parent who harms their young would be removed from the colony. The harm cannot be undone through words," the alien explained. Olivia stepped forward. "For humans, the words are just the beginning. The apology opens the door to changed behavior. Watch what happened 5 years after that apology." The screen showed the same father and son working together, laughing, the son now with children of his own who clearly adored their grandfather. The relationship was not just restored but strengthened, Samantha added. They both grew from the experience. The Vril representative clicked her front appendages. "This is unexpected. We assumed humans simply forgot past harms." "We don't forget," John said. "We forgive. There's a difference." The Arcturan leaned forward. "Show us more." For the next 2 hours, they presented example after example. International conflicts resolved through acknowledgement of wrong and promises to do better. Environmental damage addressed through public apology and restoration efforts. Personal rifts healed through recognition of hurt caused. The aliens asked many questions. Some seemed genuinely puzzled. Others showed what John thought might be interest. "There is something we do not understand," the Medusan representative said, their translation device giving their words a mechanical quality. "If your species values this apology ritual so highly, why do you continue to harm each other? Why not simply avoid causing harm?" John smiled sadly. "That's a fair question. The truth is we're not perfect. We make mistakes. We act out of anger or fear or misunderstanding. That's why the ability to apologize is so important to us. We know we'll fall short of our ideals. The apology is our way back to each other." "Crix," who had been silent throughout the presentation, suddenly spoke. Science Officer Zantu aboard. The flagship has been studying human physiology. May I share his findings? The Arcturan elder nodded permission. Humans experience measurable neurochemical changes when they apologize and when they receive apologies. Crix explained. Their bodies physically respond to this verbal exchange. The ritual has biological significance for them. Is this true? The Zolaxian asked John. Yes, Olivia answered instead. When we sincerely apologize, our bodies release stress hormones. At first, it's uncomfortable to admit wrongdoing. But afterward, both the person apologizing and the person receiving the apology experience a release of oxytocin, the same chemical involved in bonding between parents and children, or between matis. Fascinating, the Arcturan elder murmured. Your species has evolved a biological mechanism to repair social bonds. A silence fell over the room as the aliens seemed to communicate without speaking. John had learned this was common among Confederation species. They had ways of sharing thoughts that humans couldn't perceive. Finally, the Vril representative spoke. We request permission to share this information with the full council. Of course, John agreed quickly. We've prepared additional materials that explain the concept more fully. There is something else, the Arcturan elder said, her voice softer now. We have observed that this practice extends beyond your interactions with each other. Your species also apologizes to entities that cannot respond. John was confused until she continued. We found records of humans apologizing to your planet for environmental damage, to animals for habitat destruction, even to deceased ancestors for past wrongs. These entities cannot accept your apology, yet you offer it anyway. Why? It was Alan, who answered, speaking for the first time during the meeting. Because the apology isn't just for the receiver, it's also for the person apologizing. It's how we acknowledge our own mistakes and commit to doing better. Sometimes that commitment is what matters most. The Medusan suit changed to a soft, green color. This is a concept we must consider carefully. It suggests a level of self-reflection our models did not predict in your species. As the meeting concluded, John felt cautiously hopeful. The aliens weren't making any promises, but they were listening. It was a start. After the delegates returned to their shuttle, Patricia turned to the team. Well done, everyone, but we're not there yet. What's our next step? Samantha asked. We need to prove this isn't just talk, John said firmly. The Confederation needs to see that humans don't just apologize. We change our behavior. Olivia nodded. I think I know how we can do that. Back aboard the Confederation flagship, Science Officer Zantu reviewed the new data with growing excitement. As a Medusan, his six-lobed brain processed information differently than his colleagues, allowing him to see patterns others missed. Ambassador, he called to the Arcturan leader who was passing by his laboratory. I've discovered something unusual in the human behavioral patterns. The Arcturan glided closer. Explain. This apology concept isn't just communication. It's fundamental to how their civilization functions. Zantu displayed a complex chart of human history. Look at this pattern: conflict, harm, recognition, apology, improvement. It repeats throughout their development as a species. Primitive emotional regulation, dismissed the Zolaxian representative who had joined them. No, Zantu insisted. It's more sophisticated than that. Humans fight devastating wars, then rebuild their enemies' civilizations. They enslave populations, then, generations later, work to undo the damage. They continuously acknowledge past wrongs and try to correct them. The Arcturan studied the displays. A paradox, their capacity for violence matched by their capacity for, what would you call this? They call it growth, Zantu replied. Their entire civilization is built on this cycle of harm, recognition, apology, and improvement. It's chaotic, the Zolaxian said. Yes, agreed Zantu, but also remarkable. Wei, Arcturan was silent for a long moment. Summon the full council. We need to reconsider our assessment of humanity. Meanwhile, on Earth, Crix had remained behind after the other delegates departed. He approached John as the human team was leaving the conference building. "Representative Miller," he said quietly, "there is something I must tell you." John stopped. "What is it?" "The Council's decision may not be as final as they presented. There are disagreements among the species." "About Earth?" John asked, surprised. "About many things," Crix replied. "Your species is not the only one capable of change. But not all Confederation members embrace change as readily as others." Samantha joined them. "What are you saying?" Crix looked around as if worried about being overheard. "I am saying that your demonstration today affected some council members deeply, especially the Arcturans and Medusans. They see potential in humanity that others refuse to acknowledge." "And the others?" John asked. "The Zalaxians and Vril are resistant. They fear introducing such an unpredictable species into the Confederation." "So what happens now?" Samantha wondered. "That," said Crix, "depends on what you do next." The apology that made every alien rethink everything. Part 4. 3 days passed with no word from the Confederation. At the Geneva headquarters, tension grew with each passing hour. Patricia had ordered all space programs to continue as normal, not wanting to show weakness or fear, but everyone felt the weight of uncertainty. "What if they decide against us?" Samantha asked during a late-night strategy session. 100 years of isolation would set humanity back generations. "We can't think like that," John replied, though the same worry had kept him awake for nights. "We have to believe they're listening." Olivia burst into the room, tablet in hand. "They're back. Confederation ships just entered Earth orbit, 7 of them." The team rushed to the observation deck. Through the large windows they could see the massive alien vessels hanging in the sky, visible even in daylight. One smaller ship detached from the fleet and began its descent toward Earth. "They could have just sent a message," Alan muttered. "This show of force seems unnecessary." "It might not be force," John said, watching the ship's careful approach. "It might be respect." The Confederation shuttle landed at the designated diplomatic zone outside Geneva. This time it wasn't just Crix who emerged. A full delegation of representatives from all 7 species stepped onto Earth soil for the first time. The Arcturan elder led the group. Behind her walked the Zalaxian delegate, the Medusan in their containment suit, the Vril leader, and representatives from the other 3 species that humans knew less about. John, Patricia, and the team greeted them at the landing pad. Protocol officers had prepared for this possibility, but the sight of 7 different alien species on Earth still drew gasps from onlookers. "Representative Miller," the Arcturan elder spoke first. "The Council requests a formal demonstration of this apology concept for all member species to witness." John blinked in surprise. "Of course, we'd be honored. But may I ask why the full delegation has come to Earth?" The Vril leader clicked her appendages. "Some concepts must be experienced, not just explained. We wish to observe humans in their natural environment." Patricia stepped forward. "We welcome you to Earth and are happy to arrange whatever demonstrations you need." "Not arranged," said the Zalaxian, color shifting to an orange hue that John had learned indicated suspicion. "Genuine. We want to see real humans apologizing for real wrongs." John exchanged worried glances with his team. How could they possibly stage authentic apologies on demand? Olivia cleared her throat. "If I may suggest, perhaps we could invite our guests to observe daily human life. In schools, workplaces, homes, apologies happen naturally as part of our social interactions." The aliens conferred briefly in that silent way they had before the Arcturan nodded. "This would be acceptable. We will divide into groups to observe different human environments." Over the next 2 days, the alien delegates traveled in pairs, accompanied by human guides to locations around the world. The Arcturan and Medusan representatives visited a family court in Brazil, where estranged relatives worked through conflicts with mediators. The Zolaxian and a blue-scaled representative from the species called Draconians observed elementary schools in Japan and Kenya. The Vril leader and another delegate visited hospitals in India and Canada. Crix stayed with John, following him to meetings and observing his interactions. During a quiet moment, John asked the question that had been bothering him. Why did the council really send you all here? It can't just be to watch us apologize to each other. Crix was silent for a moment before answering. There is division within the council. Some believe humanity should be given a chance to join the Confederation. Others fear your unpredictability. This visit is a compromise. And what do you think? John asked. I think, Crix said carefully, that any species capable of acknowledging its flaws has great potential for growth. On the third day, the delegates gathered at a special session of the United Nations. Representatives from every Earth nation had been summoned on short notice. The room hummed with nervous energy as the alien delegates took their places at the front. The Arcturan elder stepped forward. People of Earth, we have observed your societies and interactions. We have witnessed this practice of apology in its many forms. Now we request a final demonstration. She turned to Patricia. We wish to hear how humanity would address its greatest mistakes, not to each other, but to the universe itself. A murmur went through the human delegates. No one had prepared for this request. Patricia looked to John, who nodded and stepped up to the podium. He took a deep breath, aware that his words might determine humanity's future among the stars. Distinguished representatives of the Galactic Confederation, on behalf of humanity, I offer an apology not just for the incident that brought us together, but for the pattern it revealed. John paused, choosing his words carefully. We acknowledge that our history is marked by violence. We have fought each other over land, resources, beliefs, and power. We have damaged our planet and driven species to extinction. We have often let fear guide our actions rather than wisdom. The room was completely silent. Even the human representatives seemed to hold their breath. We do not ask you to forget these truths about us. Instead, we ask you to see the full picture. Humans are capable of great harm. Yes, but also great healing. We make mistakes, but we strive to learn from them. We hurt each other, but we work to make amends. John looked directly at each alien delegate in turn. The incident at Neptune was small, but it revealed something important about us. When faced with uncertainty, Captain Bennett chose what she thought was protection. It was the wrong choice. We acknowledge that. He straightened his shoulders. What we ask is not forgiveness, but understanding. Humanity is still growing, still learning. The very qualities that make us dangerous, our passion, our independence, our creativity, also drive us to improve. We cannot promise we will never make mistakes again, but we do promise that we will always strive to recognize our errors, take responsibility for them, and work to do better. The Zolaxian delegates' colors shifted rapidly. Words, merely words. No, said Xantu, the Medusan science officer who had joined the delegation at the last minute. Not merely words. He activated a holographic display that showed scenes from Earth's history, humans fighting terrible wars, then building international cooperation, polluting their environment, then creating protection laws, oppressing groups based on differences, then establishing equal rights. This pattern is unique among known sentient species, Xantu explained to both human and alien audiences. Humans harm, recognize, repair, and grow. Their civilization advances, not despite their flaws but because of how they address them. The Arcturan elder stepped forward again. The council has reached a decision. Earth's quarantine will be lifted. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. John could hardly believe what he was hearing. However, the Arcturan continued, humanity will not yet be granted full Confederation membership. Instead, we propose a period of cultural exchange and supervised technology sharing. We have much to learn from each other. As the details were explained, John noticed something odd. The alien delegates were not just addressing the human representatives, they were watching the human reactions. And he realized with sudden clarity, this was not just about humanity proving itself worthy of the stars. This was about the Confederation, species learning something new, something they had never encountered before, the ability to say we were wrong and we can do better. The apology that made every alien rethink everything. Part 5. 6 months had passed since the Confederation Council lifted Earth's quarantine. Spring brought warm sunshine to the new Interspecies Cultural Center, built on neutral ground in New Zealand. The modern glass building reflected the surrounding mountains and housed delegations from all 7 Confederation species. John walked through the busy main hall, nodding to humans and aliens alike. What had seemed impossible less than a year ago was now becoming normal. Humans and aliens working together, learning from each other. Representative Miller called a familiar voice. Crix approached, his silver skin gleaming in the sunlight from the skylights. The Arcturan High Council has sent a new communication. I thought you would want to see it immediately. John followed Crix to a private meeting room where Samantha, Patricia, and Olivia already waited. The last 6 months had been busy for all of them. Patricia now led Earth's diplomatic team for Confederation relations. Olivia had established the first xenopsychology department focused on cross-species understanding. Samantha had become John's right hand in daily operations. What's the news? John asked, taking a seat at the round table. Crix activated the holographic display. The Arcturan High Council has been experimenting with the human concept of apology within their own society. The hologram showed Arcturans in what appeared to be a formal ceremony. Unlike their usual reserved behavior, they were touching hands in pairs, heads bowed toward each other. What are we seeing? Samantha asked. A ritual they have developed based on your human practice, Crix explained. They call it truth-facing. Arcturans acknowledge harms they have caused, express regret, and commit to improvement. Olivia leaned forward, fascinated. They've adapted our concept of apology to fit their own culture. Yes, Crix said, and they are not alone. The image changed to show Medusans, their containment suits glowing with synchronized patterns of light. The Medusans have created a similar practice they call error recognition. Even the Zalaxians have begun experimental programs in certain colonies. John could hardly believe what he was hearing. Are you saying that Confederation species are adopting the practice of apologizing? In forms that make sense within their own cultures, yes, Crix confirmed. This has never happened before. Typically, when species join the Confederation, they adopt our practices. This is the first time Confederation species have adopted a practice from a non-member world. Patricia smiled. I guess we had something valuable to contribute after all. More than you know, Crix said seriously. This has sparked debate throughout the Confederation. Many now question our approach to new species. Perhaps we have been too quick to judge based on our own standards. What does this mean for Earth's status? John asked. That is why I am here, Crix replied. The full council will arrive next week to formally invite Earth to begin the process of joining the Confederation as a full member. The room erupted in excited conversation. This was far sooner than anyone had expected. The original timeline had suggested at least 5 years of supervised cultural exchange before membership would be considered. 3 days later, John stood at the window of his office, looking out at the garden where a group of human children were showing a Vril delegate how to play soccer. The alien moved awkwardly on its many legs but seemed genuinely engaged in learning the game. It's quite a sight, isn't it? Said a voice behind him. John turned to find Zan 2 entering the room, the Medusan's containment suit humming softly. Science Officer Zan 2, I didn't know you were back on Earth. I arrived early to complete some research before the Council's formal visit, the alien explained. I wanted to speak with you privately. John gestured to a chair. Please sit. What can I do for you? The Medusan settled into the specially designed seat. I have been studying the impact of the apology concept across Confederation species. The results are remarkable. The alien activated a small device that projected charts and data into the air between them. The Arcturans have reported a 30% decrease in reproductive disputes since implementing their truth-facing ritual. Zalaxian colonies that practice colony-wide acknowledgement of errors show improved efficiency and innovation. Even the Vril, who were most resistant, have found benefits in what they call path correction. John studied the data with growing amazement. I never expected our simple human concept would have such widespread effects. That is precisely Why I wanted to speak with you, Xantu said. It is not simple at all. What humans take for granted, this ability to recognize error, feel remorse, and change behavior, is actually a complex neurological and social adaptation, one that it seems can benefit many species. The Medusan paused, the lights in his suit pulsing thoughtfully. There is another matter I wish to discuss. The Arcturan High Council has sent a private message for you. Xantu handed John a small crystal, the Arcturan's method of recording important communications. John placed it in the reader on his desk, and a holographic image of the Arcturan elder appeared. Representative Miller, she began, her voice solemn. What follows is difficult for me to say, but your human practice has shown me its value. The elder's posture changed, her head lowering slightly. On behalf of the Arcturan High Council, I wish to offer what you would call an apology. Our initial judgment of humanity was flawed. We saw your capacity for violence, but failed to recognize your capacity for growth. We nearly denied the Confederation the unique perspective your species offers. John sat in stunned silence as the Arcturan continued. For thousands of cycles, the Confederation has encountered new species and judged them by our standards. Those who did not meet our expectations were excluded or guided from afar. We never considered that we might learn from those we deemed less advanced. The elder raised her head. This is the beginning of a new approach for the Confederation. One, where we recognize that different evolutionary paths create different strengths. Humanity's great strength, it seems, is the ability to acknowledge weakness. As the message ended, John looked to Xantu. Is this real? An apology from the Arcturan High Council? The first in their recorded history, the Medusan confirmed. You must understand what this means. The concept you introduced is spreading beyond simple interpersonal relations. It is changing how entire species view themselves and others. John thought about the long journey that had brought them here. From a simple misunderstanding near Neptune to a fundamental shift in interspecies relations. What happens now? He asked. Now, said Xantu, we truly begin to learn from each other. The Confederation is already changing because of humanity's influence. And I suspect humanity will change as well as you learn from us. 1 week later, as the full Confederation Council formally invited Earth to begin the membership process, John stood with his team watching the historic moment. Humans from around the world gathered to witness the ceremony, along with representatives from all 7 Confederation species. The simple human practice of acknowledging mistakes, something so fundamental to human society that they had never considered it special, had become the bridge between Earth and the stars. As John watched humans and aliens mingling after the ceremony, he overheard a young girl asking an Arcturan a question. If you make a mistake, what do you do? The Arcturan bent down to the child's level. We now do as humans do. We acknowledge the error, express regret, and work to improve. This is perhaps the greatest gift your people have shared with us. John smiled. An apology, humanity's acknowledgement, of imperfection coupled with the drive to do better, had indeed made every alien rethink everything.